Good evening, Chatham. Welcome to the January 9, 2024 meeting of the Chatham Select Board. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chair. Seeing none, I will proceed with the rest of the introduction. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29, 2023, signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, until March 31, 2025. This meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-4918, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, Xfinity Channel 8 and 1070, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. So the first order of business is to establish our quorum. Select Board Member Nicastro.
Present.
Select Board Member Davis.
Present.
Select Board Member Dykens.
Present.
And Select Board Member Shell is present. Our Chairman, Mr. Matters, sorry, brain lock there, is on vacation tonight, so you'll have to do with me. I'll start with reviewing the business of the evening. We have the minutes of December 19, 2023, and then later on in the meeting, we'll also take up the minutes of our meeting on goals and objectives of December 2. Second item is public announcements and agenda item requests. Third item is public comments on the business agenda. And then our business agenda tonight includes, now I guess it's 5 items. First is considering the use of town roads, a presentation by the Cape Cod Athletic Club. We will put over an application for placement of Sharks for Chatham art in the park during 2024 to our meeting next week, so we won't be taking that one up. Our second item will be a discussion of the Chatham Transfer Station project update and bid results. Our next item will be a seasonal 2024 seasonal population estimate for the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission. And then our next item will be considering proposed amendments to the local alcoholic beverages regulations. And then finally, we will review and discuss for the fiscal year 2025 and calendar year 2024, the Select Board goals and objectives, and review, as I said, the draft minutes from December 2, 2023. So with that, we'll start with the minutes. Do we have any comments on the minutes of our meeting of December 19?
I'll move the minutes, Mr. Shell.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Nicastro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have just 3 small edits on page 2 under the public announcements section 2, third paragraph, single sentence where it says Mr. Meadows made an announcement. I think we should add that Mr. Hessler was also the chair of the zoning board. Then on page 6, under paragraph 4, one, two, three, four, fifth paragraph, which says Director Faley reviewed the daily gross pumping statistics. It looks like there's something missing in the second sentence at the end. Not sure what that was. And then lastly, on page 7, second paragraph, there was a concern I'd like to add at the end where it says weather conditions and safety considerations. And then after the next paragraph, which begins Chief Tufano, I think we should make note that Mr. Dykens did offer a motion that was withdrawn, just for the record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just have a couple of my own here. Actually, my first one on page 7 was the same as yours, the and safety. I was going to say and traffic, but that's fine. On page 8, this is almost an editorial comment. If you count up 3 paragraphs from the bottom and 2 lines from the bottom of that paragraph, the line that begins have come from, it was stated, over on the right, I was going to take the word of out and insert had been raised concerning, so that it reads, the question had been raised concerning liability for businesses. On page 9, the paragraph right in the middle of the sentence of the page that begins with Chief Anderson, that last sentence where he says he noted that zero tolerance takes away the discretion, I thought we should, and we did believe that it was appropriate, the discretion that they exercise is appropriate, so I was going to add the word appropriate before the word discretion. And then on page 14, and I think you already have this, Kathy, but in the paragraph that begins the warrant will be posted, the last sentence I think is going to change to say the town election must be within 8 days thereafter, and in fact, I think it's on May 16, which is the Thursday after the annual town meeting. So with that, I will take a vote on the minutes as revised. Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
And Mr. Shell says yes. Public announcements and agenda item requests. I'll look to the board first for any. Mr. Dykens?
Thank you, Mr. Shell. I just have one kind of new item and then a couple follow-ups. I just want to remind Jill and the board. A very diligent and assiduous member of the community that was a member of the Monomoy Regional School Committee and then also the school building project wanted to know there were flashing lights, I believe, approved or in the planning for the middle school on Crowell Road. And there are 2 signs there now that have slow down 20 miles an hour school district. But I think in the original plan, there were plans for flashing lights as well. And I just wanted to know, have Jill and Rob Faley research what the regs are with respect to having the signage and the lights outside the school, because I think it's probably appropriate to have flashing lights there as well. And just a couple follow-ups. I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of conversation about Sears Point and the railing there. And I also don't want to lose track of the conversation or the planning for the playground at Volunteer Park. I walk there sometimes, and I'm reminded repeatedly when I walk around. I've spoken to Jill about all these items, but I just wanted to put them out there for the public and for the board as well. I'm hoping that Park and Rec are making plans to get that playground rebuilt back in West Chatham. We have no playground in West Chatham. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from the board? If not, I don't see anybody here in the room. Anybody online? Do you see anybody?
No one online with their hand raised.
Okay, thank you very much. Public comments on the business agenda. We're open for any public comments. I see one hand there online.
Mr. Chair, it's Ms. Gibbs.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My comments right now are about the transfer station that you're going to be taking up. And I would just like to comment on the fact that we appropriated, I think it was 4.82 million for both phase 1 and 2 to be done. And the recommendation and approval by town meeting was that phase 2 would be done first. The cost of phase 2 was to be 2.1 million. Apparently that had, numbers had been worked up by Weston and Sampson, I guess, in February or March. And that 2.1 has increased to 3.852 million. That's an 83% increase. And then the total project has gone from 4.8 million to 7,024,000. So I would hope that the recommendation at this point, rather than to proceed spending 3.8 million on phase 2, is to go back to the drawing board and try and figure out if we can do better than that. It's interesting that at the time that was being priced, Pomeroy and Barkman were going out to people for construction projects. And if you recall, they were saying that the costs were slowing down. And that's why there wasn't such a substantial increase in the Council on Aging. So I don't see how this one could go up 83% during the same time period in terms of construction materials. So those are my comments, and hopefully we don't proceed with this, because I don't think town meeting bought on to $7 million. They bought on to 4.8. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay, moving along with the commencement of the business agenda. The first item is a proposal from the Cape Cod Athletic Club for use of town roads on 2 occasions in 2024. Do we have somebody here to make that application?
Good evening.
Could you just introduce yourself for the
I'm
record?
Howard Tansey from the Cape Cod Athletic Club.
Thank you.
And race director of the 2 races that we are trying to get use of the roads for. First race is Chatham Harbor Run, which is going to be in its 43rd running on June 23rd, I believe. Yeah. We raised money for Monomoy Dollars for Scholars and our own scholarship fund that goes to kids on the Cape also. So that's the first one we're looking for. We have been in contact with the police, the fire department, the highway department, and also we talked to the school about using the middle school for our, to plan the event from there. So we're looking for that one. And then the second one is the Chatham in the Fall 10K, which is on the same course as the summer race. This year, we're going to raise money for the foster closet, which is, they raise money for clothes or donations for clothes for kids on the Cape or in foster care. And the same thing, we've talked to the police department, we've talked to the fire department, highway department, and our school for that. So those are the 2 we're looking for.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the board? Shireen?
Hi, Howard. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks. So I just totally supportive of both these runs. Just a question was there won't be a 5K walking event during the Harbor Run? Was that?
Yes, that's exactly right. We dropped it a couple years ago, and there hasn't been a lot of pushback on it, because the Chatham Walkers used to help us with that, but then they've kind of stepped back from that, so.
Okay. And this is the second year you're not doing it then?
This will be the 3rd.
Third, okay. All right, great, thanks. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Dykens?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the use of town roads for the 43rd Annual Chatham Harbor Run to be held on Sunday, June 23rd, 2024 at 11 a.m.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
And Mr. Shell says aye.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the use of town roads for the 7th Annual Chatham in the Fall 10K race to be held on Sunday, November 24th, 2024 at 11 a.m.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Thanks very much.
Fun hours,
Appreciate
good
it.
luck, raise a lot of money.
Yeah, do it. The next item on the agenda is a discussion of the transfer station Phase 1 and Phase 2 project update and bid results. And is Mr. Faley with us perhaps online?
He's remote, yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the preview indicated, Article 27 had approved for the transfer station 4.82 million. There was an additional 470,000 approved back from the 2020 annual town meeting. Of that, we still had 216,000 remaining. So that left 5,036,000 remaining for the construction of phases 1 and phases 2. Construction was broken into 2 phases to separate the vertical and horizontal construction. So phase 1 is the recycling area. That was our second priority. That bid came in, that estimate was at $2,720,000. Phase 2, which is our first priority, was for the staff building. That estimate was at $2.1 million. So we opened the filed sub bids on November 30th, and then we followed up with the general contractor. This is for phase 2. Bids came in at $3.852 million, roughly. Again, the estimate was $2.1 million, so we were quite a bit higher than we expected. Phase 1, which is the recycling area, we opened bids on December 21st. That lump sum bid came in at $3.17 million. The estimate was at $2.7 million, so a much more reasonable escalation of costs. But for both phases, where we had a little over $5 million available, they came in at a little over $7 million. So we were short a funding shortfall of just under $2 million. We did look at things that we could possibly do to try to reduce the cost of the building. Most of them were very small value, substituting materials, eliminating some things. The biggest cost savings we could find was eliminating the fire suppression system. It's not required by code. It's a $200,000 item, but then we may compromise the functionality of the building in the future. So really, we're kind of stuck. We're at a crossroads here of making a decision on where we want to go. I recommend that we go ahead with construction of phase 2 at the $3.8 million and do not award the phase 1 project. We can go out to bid again in the spring or in the summer if we ask for voters of Chatham to approve additional money to cover some of that escalation of cost. And we could also look at efficiencies or reducing the scale of the design to try to save money that way as well. What I fear is if we postpone awarding phase 2 for the building, we may have less of a building or a smaller footprint of a building, and we wind up paying about the same amount of money because the costs just continue to increase as we go forward. So that's all I have. I'll answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rob, I just wanted to clarify again, what was the original estimate for phase 2?
Phase 2 was 2.1 million,
2.1?
the engineer's estimate. Correct.
And it came in at 3.8. And the original,
$3,852,330.
and the original estimate for phase 1 was what?
2.72 million.
Well, I certainly wouldn't like the approach of eliminating these rather small, cost-effective savings such as the fire suppression, that doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't justify, the amount of savings financially doesn't justify the elimination of those features. Phase 2, I think this board has felt consistently is more important than Phase 1, because it really relates to our responsibilities to our employees that are working there, principally, as well as others. I'm not sure what we should do about this. When you say under the first bullet on the first page of your memo that there were no steel bidders, what does that mean? There was a steel estimate in the general contractor bid, but what does that mean? Was something missing that might have been bid by the subs?
Yes, so that is basically steel for reinforcing steel for the concrete. The building actually is almost like a prefab steel structure, and that is handled as a single lump sum. But all the filed subbids are all the different categories that support that building. So the steel is just the reinforcing steel. So we extended the length of the contract an additional week so we can have the general contractors add steel into their contract. So that was an additional cost that the general contractor had to bear.
Okay. So what is the time period when these estimates, when these numbers came in, what were they based on? What I'm getting at is the obviously there's been inflation, significant inflation the last several years. The inflation rate generally has been going down nationally. Do these numbers reflect an older and not current assessment of costs, because the numbers relate to a period when the inflation was still relatively high? You heard the comments made by Ms. Gibbs in terms of the percentage increase, which is dramatic, obviously. Do we have a sense?
It is. So the numbers were revisited in, I would say, late February, early March of 2023. The design was not completed yet at that time, but that's when we had to go out to annual town meeting with the funding request. As the design developed further, the estimate would be able to be refined a little bit further. I know there's a challenge with hiring skilled labor on Cape Cod, especially. So it seems like we are, we're in a kind of a difficult time where, skilled labor such as electricians and plumbers are in very high demand, so they can garner a higher cost.
Well, I appreciate what you just said about labor costs. Do I understand that the bids that were submitted reflect cost data that dates back to February of 2023?
It was before my time in Chatham, but it was either February or early March of 2023.
Okay. So these were approved at annual town meeting in May. That's what we presented to the town based on those.
That's correct.
If we were to rebid now, how long would it take to get new numbers in?
So we can't rebid unless we make substantial changes to the plans.
Why is that the case? Is that the law?
I think that's just in Massachusetts general law, I believe.
Is that, town manager, do you have a comment on that?
Yes, what it is that the most responsible bidder provided a verifiable bid. And the only way to reject it is to have another substantial change to it. So the theory is, I guess in practicality, that they bid on what we've asked them to bid, and that it came in higher. I think maybe Rob can talk about some of the drivers for that with the sub-bids, but we'd have to make a substantial change.
I guess I'm a little surprised at that, being the state of the law. Do we know that from, have we asked town council that question? 'Cause I'm just wondering if we could.
We can follow up with them. I think, I was thinking possibly that because if it was one bid for both phases and it came in higher than the appropriation, we don't have an appropriation to cover that, but that there were two separate bids. We do have enough in the appropriation to cover one, but the expectation of the voters was to cover both of the phase projects.
Well, going back to your substantial change rule, what if you rebid both of them as one item? Phase 1 and Phase 2? Would that be a substantial enough change? Do we know?
I don't know. I don't know if Rob knows offhand either.
I mean, I guess, well, let me go back to Rob. Assuming it were legally possible to rebid as we bid before, two separate, or whether you package them in as one bid, how long would it take what's the time frame for getting responses?
Well, we'd have to combine the plans, come up with new revised estimates, and then go out to, advertise a minimum of a 3-week period, I would say.
Well,
Probably a 2-month timeframe.
Okay, so let's, when you said combine the plans, are you thinking that we would bid Phase 1 and Phase 2 as one package? Is that what
Well, I thought that's what you were
Yeah,
trying to.
well, whether we did it that way or whether we did it the original way as two separate items, would it be the same time frame?
It would be roughly the same time frame, yes.
And if the bids came in significantly higher than our estimates as they did now, as they have before us, we would have some time to go to town meeting in May if we needed more money. I mean, well,
I just
I
worry
guess
that
I'm just
enough time-
stating that point. I guess I mean, I don't know if anybody else knows. I'm not an authority on the bidding laws. I mean, I used to have better knowledge of them when I was city solicitor, but, and rules may have changed, but I'm rather surprised that a town can't say, hey, this is too expensive. We're going to send it out again. So I wonder if, unless I'm dead wrong, if we could, get an opinion from town council on that. Anyway, I throw that out. I'm not requesting it if the rest of the board wants to do it. Those are my comments for the time being.
No, I was struck by the cost increase, to be honest with you. Quite struck. We got permission or town meeting approved for 8, the bids came in at 7 million. I mean, that's a huge increase, number one. Number two, I'd like to know how many bids we got and what the dot plot looked on the high end of the bid versus these are the low end. How many bids did we actually get? Did we get 1, 2, 5, 10? And then what that dot plot looked like, number one. Number two, if these are the low bids, and I am assuming they are, why was there such a large cost increase over what we projected originally at 4.8? Is it the cost of steel and the cost of labor? We haven't changed the plans. There was the same plan that we costed out before. So I am struck by the increase. It's fairly large, and I wouldn't spend more than 5 million without going back to town meeting. No matter what we do, we wouldn't do it. We can't do it. We won't do it. I wouldn't think. So what can we get? I guess my next question is, what can we get for 5 million? We can only get Phase 2. That's it. Okay, and that's the building and the spot for the employees as well, the employee shelter and the new building, and the new steel building. Yeah. So anyway.
Correct. Phase 1 or Phase
Yeah.
2, but not both.
Well, and the large increase, however, is Phase 2. That's where the big increase is. Phase 1's like 400 grand. It's not even, it's kind of negligible. Not negligible, that's a big number, but all the increase is Phase 2. So someone knew we were coming. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like an extraordinary increase, Rob, from what was projected originally. I just wonder why, and I think that's a legitimate question.
If I think we all have the same sentiment, Rob, if I could try to maybe refine, and I may not do any better than either Jeff or Dean, but have we looked, I mean, the one question is how many bids did we have, and do we have a confidence based on that, you know, we had covered the waterfront and this is the best you could do out there, and therefore, if we go back to the market, we're going to get the same or a worse answer. That's one question, one side of it. But I sort of heard you say that the design that was the basis for the estimates in February, for one reason or another, perfectly good reasons, but wasn't exactly what was bid on, because the design was developed further as the summer or the spring and the summer progressed. So one element of analysis, if you can, I'd be interested in hearing is how much of the increase in cost based from the, whatever it was, 2.1 to 3.8 comes from that change in design. That's one thing. And then the second thing is, and again, Jeff was sort of alluding to it, as you looked at the elements of the bids and compared them to the elements of the estimate, was it labor? Was it the material costs that went up? Or, I mean, really, can we be a little granular for two reasons? One, so we just understand what happened, but also to evaluate the sentiment Dean is articulating about going back. I mean, never mind the legal issue. Does it make any sense if going back to the market basically is going to get the same or a worse answer, then whether it's legal or not doesn't make a lot of sense. So I know that's a lot of questions, but if you could maybe try to, as best you can, address some of those, I think it would be helpful.
Sure, I'd be happy to attempt anyway. So there were 4 general contractors that bid on the project. The sub-bidders, there was any number, every category had at least one. Some of them had, I believe, up to 3 different contractors. The prices were pretty tight for the filed sub-bids. When it came to the general contractors, you know, they have to assume all the costs for the sub-bids in their price. Again, the low bid was 3.8 million. The high bid was 4.5 million. So they all came in substantially higher than the engineer's estimate. I know back in February, about a 60% design plan was done when the estimate was created. Weston and Sampson was the consultant. They have a lot of experience with transfer station design and building design. The building comes in kind of a prefabricated model. You know, all the parts are there. They just have to erect it on site, and then they have to organize, you know, all the other pieces that are part of the bid. Like I said, they have experience. They've kind of had cost expectations. They were surprised as well as we were. I don't know if some of it is just Cape Cod, and most of these contractors were off Cape, and they have to put their employees up for housing. There could be a number of issues. I don't really have anything that I could put my finger on to direct us.
But just to refine the question a little bit, and maybe there's not a follow, I mean, you don't have the information, but just comparing the general with the subs, that as you looked at the elements of the estimates, if you look at the sub bids, there's electrical, there's plumbing, there's, you know, this, that, and the other. Were the subs, compared to the estimates, were they also that big increase, or were they more or less in line? So we could say the increase is more in the general contractor's bid.
So I didn't have the subcategories broken out separately, and the building was a lump sum. So we don't ask for the breakdown from the vendors until they're the successful bidder. So all we're getting right now is a price, and we don't have any of the makeup to really break that down further until we know that, yeah, we're moving forward and they're the successful bidder, and then we get the breakdown of all their costs.
And just let me ask one follow-up, and then I'll turn it back to you, Jeff. Would it be possible to say to the general, look, this is a huge increase, we need to understand how this happened before we can decide to go forward? Can you break the elements of the proposed contract down for us as against the very granular elements of the estimate that you were bidding against, and they had the estimates, I take it, and so that we can understand where the increases were and hopefully why they occurred?
Yeah, we can absolutely do
Is that something that's possible?
Yeah, assuming that the contractor is agreeable, but if they understand that a possible successful award is on the line, I'm sure they would cooperate.
Okay. Jeff, I'm sorry, you were going to
Yeah,
say
no,
something.
and I think that's a reasonable approach. I was going to echo that. I think that we ought to ask and see where where we're out of whack here with respect to the original estimate. I mean, it sort of, kind of strains credulity a little bit that it's this much of an increase. It's sizable. So I'd like to know why and where. I mean, I think that's those are reasonable questions. And I also think that we should pursue with town council, what our options are as a municipality in terms of rebidding the project. Just what are our options? What are they? Because I'm not ready to vote on this project tonight, to be honest with you. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, we also have Carrie, our
Yeah,
finance director.
I see that, but let me ask Dean to. but I
Yeah,
do see
thank
that.
you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to go back to what I said earlier. If, in fact, these numbers reflect the state of inflation in February of 2023, when inflation was what, 5%, 4 or 5%, and it's now down to barely 2. Yeah. I think we should, I appreciate and support what both of you just said about getting a breakdown, but I would favor rebidding if we're permitted to do that legally. So we should, it's not that I doubt what town manager and the director are saying, but I'd like to get town council's view on it.
Okay, we have our finance director who's raised her hand, Carrie Mazzarolo.
Hi. Yep. How are you?
Good.
Carrie Mazzarolo, Finance Director. I was just doing a quick search for Mass General laws. So I got the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office on public construction bidding facts. This is a common question when an awarding authority may an awarding authority rebid a contract, but we haven't signed a contract yet. But it does state, under circumstances in which an awarding authority may rebid a contract is for insufficient funds, ambiguous speculations, and new specifications on rebid. But again, we don't have a contract signed, so I don't know if this is something that, we may have to ask legal about it. I haven't seen anything else about rebidding.
Well, and that's helpful. I think what we need to do here is set the table for a reconsideration of the whole picture.
Yeah.
Dean would like to know what are our options for going back and in effect reissuing our RFP, either as separate projects or together. What are our options there? And then I would like to have the kind of granular detail comparison of the winning proposal versus the cost estimates that hopefully Rob can get from the contractor, which will help inform our judgment about whether it makes any sense to go back to in other words, what was the source of the increase, and does it make sense for us to go back and try and do better in the marketplace? Shereen?
I agree with that, Mike. I think that we need to find out if there's some sort of anomaly there. So when we do a bid, it's at 100% design, or does it go out at 60% or 75%?
I think it depends. With this having a prefab building, I think that, thank you. I think with a prefab building, And in a February meeting with the select board to put something on the warrant in March, I think that the engineer felt that that could hold those estimates.
So-
With the various, retainers and so forth and contingency plans. But today's market, we're not the only town that's had a bid that's come in way over the appropriation. We're seeing that. But what I can do is we'll figure out, certainly the contractor has responded to the bid request. So we can take another look at that, and I can touch base with town council and hopefully bring this back to you for next week. The timeline that Rob was concerned about is that the bids are only good for a certain amount of time. And I don't know where we are with that, in that time period, and I'm not sure if we lost Rob. But certainly we can, if they're not gonna hold the bid prices for another 30 days or so, then we might not be able to award it anyway. So I was kind of stalling for you to get on, Rob. Is there anything else you want to say in that regard?
No, I think you covered it, Jill. Thank you.
If I may, the only other place that I would, again, just spitballing more or less, I'd go back to, if you can, to Weston and Sampson and ask them for a similar type of granular assessment of, if we can, what happened here? If this is happening all over the state and the Cape, that's information that would be useful for us to have when we have to make a decision. But on a granular basis, element to element, from the estimate to the sub-bids, the subcomponents of the contract price, the steel, and whatever else the general contractor is providing for his contribution to the total, that would be helpful if we could have that kind of an analysis.
And I can't say that both Rob and I felt uncomfortable signing and awarding the contract for the Phase 2, which is priority 1, because of this very discussion. And so I think it's very helpful to hear from the board.
Well, we are feeling similar discomfort.
I don't want to know the identity, but is the low bidder someone we've worked with before?
Rob, do you have that in front of you?
They are not. They are out of Rhode Island.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
So I think we'll table this for next week, and hopefully you can bring back to us as much of the kinds of details and answers to questions that we've put on the table here. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I just see, Rob, you have your hand up still. Was there something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I had met with Weston and Sampson on a couple of occasions once these bids were opened, and I'm meeting with them again tomorrow morning at, I believe, 10 o'clock. So we will try to get some more information and get to the bottom of it and report back to the select board next week.
Okay, thanks very much. Moving to our next item of business, which is the seasonal population estimate for alcoholic beverages control commission. Shauna Neely is here to present that.
Sure, Shauna Neely, licensing agent for the town. Once again, our annual setting of a seasonal population estimate for purposes of reporting to the Alcoholic Beverages Control Commission to determine the number of seasonal licenses available to the town. Traditionally, and I wish we knew where this number came from, we don't. Traditionally, it had been estimated at 30,000 for many years, and last year, the board chose to up it to 33,000.
Sheree?
Shauna, my question is, it's an arbitrary number, obviously, but how long was it at 30,000?
At least 10 years.
10 years,
At
okay.
least.
In thinking about, when we're talking about a lot of planning in the town and stuff and how we create all kinds of, programs and we fund for projects, we always are talking about funding for 35,000 people, you know? And so I just think that we should up our game a little and just go to that. But the other question I had is, what is the cap? I mean, when is there a shift or a change in more licenses or less licenses, or, I mean, where are
For
we?
Chatham, it would be probably around, it would only apply to package stores, seasonal package stores, and I think we would need to be at 50 to add anything because the town has already converted 3 seasonal package store licenses to annual licenses.
I got it,
so-
okay. I'm going to make a motion, unless anybody else has any ideas, but I move that we estimate the seasonal population to be 35,000 as of July 10th, 2024.
Do I hear a second? Well seconded.
That's fine. Mr.
But
Chairman.
yes, I know you want it, but
No, that's
I'll
fine.
put the second on the record and then go ahead.
That's
Go
great,
ahead.
thanks. So if we go from 33 to 35, we don't pick up any more licenses?
No.
What did they divide it up by?
It's a quota
divisor?
system based on population, so for Chatham, I think it would need to go to 50 to get us an additional seasonal package store.
And this is just for package stores, this estimate?
Yes.
What about restaurants? They don't,
Restaurants is really at the discretion of the board,
oh.
and I don't know that we'd ever max out.
Have we had requests for, I haven't seen any for new package stores in all the 9 years I've been on the board.
Because we haven't had one available.
Okay. Okay.
Or will we?
Not likely.
Well, we went from 30 to 33, and as Shireen said, 30 has been in place a long time, and I know in my case, the recollection of the prior summer was that we were overwhelmed with people, so I thought it was very well justified, and I think last summer was not much different in terms of the population around town in the summer, so I think I could support 35. It's not going to make any difference in Boston anyway.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, we'll take a vote. Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Dykens?
Aye.
And Mr. Shell says aye. 35,000 it is.
Thank you.
Okay? Oh, okay, sorry.
Still here.
Um,
Moving
I
on.
read- Moving on, yes, well, I'm a little slow tonight. So the next one is a little more substantive. Proposed amendments to the local alcoholic beverages licensing regulations, and you've presented us with a revised set of regulations. Do you want to speak to that, Shauna?
Sure. Primarily, the changes would be to Section C for the special one-day licenses as a follow-up to the conversations surrounding Oktoberfest and the Christmas stroll. But there were some other small changes, I would consider housekeeping items, changing to reflect Select Board rather than Board of Selectmen, and some clarifying language in other sections. But primarily under the special one-day licenses, after discussions with Chief Anderson, we pulled some, the requirement for a well-defined plan or diagram of the premise out of a possibility and into a new section for application requirements. That would also require the applications to be received at least 30 days prior to the event, and require the applicant to attend a meeting or have a representative attend a meeting at which the application is considered, and also include a description of the measures proposed to control the service of the alcohol and confinement to the premise.
Okay, thank you very much. Question, Mr. Dykens?
Thank you, Michael. Sean, I only have one, on pages, I think it's 9 and 10, those are where the changes are in Section C, but the only issue I had was no fewer than 30 days. We've had applications that have come in certainly under that wire, if you will.
Right.
Why the no fewer than 30 days, and will we have any wiggle room for an appellant, if you will, if someone came in and they really wanted to do this and it was within the 30-day window? Thanks.
Both the chief and I felt that having the applications come in at least 30 days prior would give he and I a chance to review exactly what the request is, and if there were any concerns, we could take them up with the applicant prior to bringing the completed application to you, if any adjustments could or would be made.
It's been my experience that there've been few that we've denied, if ever, and there haven't been too many issues with respect to the applicants, other than folks not showing up to explain, defend, enumerate what's going on with their particular request. So I think 30 days is a little tight, to be honest with you, but those are my thoughts. I would go 15, or at least a meeting or two prior to having the event. I just know that there have been times when we have approved them in the past much sooner than 30 days, believe me. Thanks.
Dean?
Well, to that point, maybe we could insert a provision language allowing the select board to basically waive the 30 days upon reasonable cause shown, something like that. So have it at 30 days, that's the standard. I don't know if that works legally, but that's what I would.
Yeah, I'm going to tinker with that a little bit. I hear that. I think it might be a little bit cumbersome for us to do it if the licensing agent could, for good cause shown, permit it later, less than 30 days. I think that addresses Jeff's problem and, for the most part, gets everybody in 30 days ahead of time. And if somebody comes in with, whatever the excuse is, you can decide whether to accept it. The other element of this that I didn't really focus on it, but as I now am thinking about it here, my question is, if you had all the applications in 30 days ahead of time, and there were a ton of them, and you were concerned that maybe we need to only grant a certain number of them, the 30-day requirement, I take it, would facilitate that if we could then say we're only going to grant 70% of them or 30%, whatever the number is.
Yes,
Does that work from your perspective?
Yes, and there was the insertion of one sentence in that the LLA, the local licensing authority, reserves the right to limit the number of applications, permits issued on any given day, so that you would have that opportunity to say, wow, we've got 45 applications for one day, that's just too many.
So I guess that, I don't know how that works with the board versus you as the licensing agent being the one that grants the waiver for a late application, but I'll take a recommendation on that. Go ahead, Gene.
Yeah, I'm okay with that in principle, and I just wanted to make sure, since we are the licensing authority, not the licensing agent, is that going to be okay? Has this been reviewed, or will it be reviewed by town council?
It will be reviewed. I wanted to pass
So you
these by
could-
you to see if we were on track or not with what you were thinking.
So we-
It does require a public hearing, which would then be scheduled.
So do we have to give you the language tonight?
It would be helpful, or if you want
Yeah.
to,
So it was your suggestion, why don't you offer the language, we could insert it, and she'll run it by town.
Well, I liked your on good cause shown
Yeah.
for accepting a late application, and then it's just a question of who decides, who grants
Yeah.
the waiver. And
Yeah.
I'm okay as long as council is with that's being.
I would be too, yeah, as long as he's okay
The
with it.
agent, yeah.
And I am as well.
So what did I say, except for good?
On showing good cause, a waiver will be permitted by the licensing agent or something to that effect.
Or
Within
just
30
on,
days
for 30 days,
prior to the date,
except,
for,
go ahead. I got
I'm trying to remember exactly my phrasing before, but I
Kathy has it.
You had it as to insert a provision to allow the select board to waive the 30 days upon reasonable cause shown, is what I
okay.
had.
So maybe add a sentence at the, after the, or put a semicolon in the third line after the word applied, where it says applied period, put semicolon, whether it's the agent or the select board,
we could certainly say local licensing authority or designee.
okay? I'll say that.
Okay.
May waive the 30-day requirement upon good cause shown.
by Pat. Run that by Pat and see what he says. Yeah.
Other than that, I think
Schedule a
we're,
public hearing.
well, yeah, oh, do we need to schedule a public hearing now here?
Yes. So Shauna, do you have a recommended date for that?
January 30th.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, do you want to vote on that?
yeah, we need to.
Mr.
vote.
Chairman, I move that we schedule a public hearing on these proposed regulation changes for January 30th. Is that a select board night?
Yes.
At 5:30 PM
Second.
here.
Okay, I'll take a vote here. Mr. Nacastro,
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
And Mr. Shell says aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank
can I
you.
just ask a question? So
Yeah,
will
please.
you usually notify the Merchants Association and the Chamber of the public hearing and?
All of the annual and seasonal licensees, plus anyone who has pulled a special one day, will receive notice of the meeting.
Good, okay. Great, thank you.
Okay, so we will turn to review and consider acceptance of the board goals and objectives. Let me start with the minutes. In the first instance, of our meeting on December 2nd, 2023, in Conference Room A at 549 Main. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Okay,
Just-
go ahead.
I had one question. This appears in a couple of locations. So you're looking for an approval of the minutes.
Yes.
So on the first page, just before the item that's in bold that says proposed goal, it says the discussion of the proposed goals and objectives had no, there's something missing there. Do we know what it is?
I believe that was supposed to, no, the discussion was not it wasn't a prioritize, it's not representing a prioritization of the goals, it was,
Had no prioritization.
Yeah.
With that word there. And then, on the next page, we're up at the top, potential objectives, the third bullet. Don't we mean East Harwich instead of West Harwich?
Yes,
That's a good catch.
yes.
And that appears somewhere else. I think it actually appears in the separate document. I did want to revisit, well, I'm going to strike the word revisit. Under potential objectives discussed two-thirds of the way down, the final bullet, revisit the idea. I'd like to substitute the word revive the idea, because we've worked on that, and that's, that,
Instead of revisit.
Where's that, Gene?
revive,
I see, okay.
revive, and the same thing is true on the next page. Potential objectives discussed in the middle, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth bullet down, revisit the idea, revive the idea. Because we had done some work on it, and I think that's the more appropriate. Otherwise, I'm okay with the minutes.
Okay, I had a couple of my own, no surprise. On page, did
Yeah,
you?
just on the bottom of page 3.
Yep.
Under, right above, potential objectives discussed. On bottom of page 3, right above, potential objectives discussed, last sentence of the paragraph above, and protect the overall environmental quality of the town's water by the end of fiscal year 24, starting June 30th, 2024. Just add what town's water, please. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, my first comment on the minutes, page 2, in the paragraph immediately under proposed goal year-round housing. The second sentence, I want to add, that second sentence really isn't a sentence, so I want to say there was recognition of the need to develop infrastructure, and then it carries on. Page 3 at the top, under potential objectives discussed. first bullet, I think we should say all current town-owned properties. Page 3 also, under potential objectives, discuss the first bullet there. I think this was my comment, so I intended to suggest promoting drilling of private wells for homes that currently have or wish to install irrigation systems. So insert currently have or between that and wish. I'll ask the advice of the board here. On page 4, the bullet at the top says that we should task the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee to include a review, et cetera, and determine if a consultant is needed. I wasn't clear exactly what the consultant would be needed to do, but I guess they'll figure that out, unless somebody thinks we ought to refine that.
I wasn't sure either when I read it, what it meant. The plan, I think, has been developed by consultant, wasn't Weston and Sampson, or was it developed by Rob Faley and Tom Barr? Rob's still on.
Yeah, the plan we've been using for capital project financing had been done in-house, and then there was a contract with Weston and Sampson back in, I think they delivered the report of September of 2022 that the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee has been reviewing. But that doesn't necessarily get us to looking forward. It catches us up to where we are. Essentially, when we had the PFAS treatment, that wasn't included. I think it was unknown at the time, but it wasn't included. So they were working on it, and if Rob wants to chime in, he's welcome to.
Yeah, at Monday's, Rob was there, at Monday's Water and Sewer Committee meeting, there was some discussion of this, and there was a representation, I think, from the staff that the committee was going to get the document at its next meeting, which would be in February. The committee itself hasn't yet seen the document. So I don't know whether this reference to a consultant was the consultant that's doing the plan or a consultant that's going to be brought in to look at implementing recommendations in the plan. I don't know. I don't remember what was in our minds when we discussed it.
I think it was a matter of updating the,
Okay.
like we were at a certain point, but, going forward,
Okay.
there needed to be maybe some updating or just a review of that, and I think that's where we were at.
Okay.
Or where we were trying to get to,
Okay.
anyway.
And with that, I think the language in the minutes is fine. I mean, it's a little
It's ambiguous, but
but
it's
we
fine,
were
yeah.
obviously ambiguous in our thoughts as well. So, to the merits,
You have a motion and a second.
good point. Thank you very much. Let's vote on the minutes. Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
And Mr. Shell says aye. The minutes are approved as amended. Turning to what we have here as a draft at the end of this, identified as Select Board Goals and Objectives Fiscal Year 2025, from our work session on the 2nd of December last year. I don't want to preclude or preempt a full discussion of this. On the other hand, I want to be candid that, at least as far as I'm concerned, I think we need to go back and have one more session among ourselves, not to the exclusion of the public. Obviously, that December 2nd was public as well. But I don't think we are in a position here to do the work that I think is necessary to bring this to a point where it would make sense for us to approve it. But as I said, I don't want to preempt a discussion on the merits. Shereen?
I'm fine with that, Mike. I don't feel comfortable that Corey's not here, too. I think that that's an important piece is, whether or not he signs off on it or whatever, he's not here for the discussion, and I think it should be a full board talking about this.
Yeah, I agree with that. I did have a conversation with Corey. He didn't specifically allude to this. And by the way, I share your view, but he strongly indicated he was very, very comfortable with this in the state that it was in. And I only bring that up because I don't want the record to suggest that we're putting this off because he wasn't here. And I think he was entitled to take a vacation. He did, and if it were ready, we would approve it. But if it's the collective view that we think it's not quite ready, we'll go back to the drawing board and finish it with him. Yeah, Dean.
Yeah, I'm generally comfortable with the document, with those same edits that we had in the minutes about East Harwich and Revive. But I do think we have an advantage tonight if we, and I'm not proposing any vote tonight. I'm okay with having another session on this, and maybe it could be added on to one of our regular board meetings or at another evening.
Or a Saturday morning.
Yeah, well, I guess so. But not 2 hours, just one. But this is available for public comment tonight. It would be interesting to see if there is any public comment, and we can take it back to our next workshop on this, so, okay.
Mr. Chair, we had wanted to make a presentation tonight, just to give some background of how we came up with the objectives that you discussed at we have no direction right now from you. Would it be possible for Kathy and I to give the presentation?
Sure.
And then however the board wants to go? Because I think first of all, the good news is that there was a lot of consensus, and a lot of the board and a lot of the free-flowing discussion was on the same page. And so what we tried to do when we were presenting, this document is trying to balance some of that. So there is some editing to what we think we heard and where the board wants to go. But we thought if we can at least have that opportunity tonight, and as I have to present the budget in 2 weeks, I don't know if any of this is really going to affect that, but I just wanted the opportunity to present it, if that's okay.
And that's fine. If I may, I'd just like to share a couple of comments here, which are positive. I thought this was a great session that we had. I think what we have presented to us this evening is very good. I just want to point out that largely at the suggestion of the staff, that we made a fairly substantial change in our approach, where we had, once upon a time, 14 value statements that we attempted to convert into 6 SMART goals and objectives that incorporate and express and promote those value statements, more or less. I think what we have in front of us is I'll use a construction metaphor. I think the frame carpentry is done. The structure is there. I think that we still have finish and trim work to be done. Drafting, maybe looking at how the objectives support each one of the goals, and that a session of the board to more or less refine those pieces as they fit together is something that would get us to a truly good, excellent finished product, which we have the basis to get to from what's in front of us right now. So that's the reason why I came with the suggestion that I did. But go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Kathy, do you want to move forward?
Sure. So you kind of summed up what I was going to start with, was that this was a departure from your normal or previous goal-setting workshops, where we did try to incorporate the value statements in a slightly different way, We also introduced, for the first time, a vision statement to try to help focus the discussion on goal setting, which, as you can see here, this was the culmination of all of your worksheets. We found the commonalities and drafted this vision statement, which at the work session you asked to revisit. So this is again, the draft of the vision statement, which states Chatham in 2030 will be a forward-looking, engaged, and inclusive community of demographically diverse, year-round citizens that maintains the unique balance between preserving our pristine environment while ensuring a healthy economy and fiscally responsible and responsive leadership that welcomes all to Chatham. What you'll see throughout this presentation, we've incorporated some of the staff recommendations and some of the edits that we've heard from you as the board. They'll be seen in red throughout this, and there'll be, and it's also in the packet materials as well, but for the public's edification, that's what the red signifies. So again, this was the vision statement we kind of started the work session with to try to say, okay, this is where we want Chatham to go, how do we get there? And that was, as you recall, how we kicked off that meeting. Sorry, I turned my microphone on there. Okay. So, again, in no particular order, we discussed the goals. The first being educational excellence, and the goal that was drafted at that time was the town will support the educational excellence of the Monomoy Regional School District through funding for capital infrastructure, help promote positive enrollment growth over the next 3 to 5 years. We came up with you came up with three potential objectives as listed, which included budgeting, collaborating to support enrollment growth, and again, with the edit to East Harwich families and school choice potential. So again, those were the potential objectives for that goal. Let's see. The second goal discussed was to maintain a sustainable local economy. There were some dates as we went through this and revised it from the staff perspective and presented it to them that we are asking the board to consider confirming the dates and the timeline of some of these items just to make sure that those are feasible, and perhaps that's something that will be discussed at that second work session.
Forgive me for interrupting,
Sure.
but one of my comments that I had thought we would discuss when we get back together again is taking most of the dates out. So, I want to say, again, I appreciate the effort here, but this is sort of a rerun of what's in the minutes.
Sure.
And what's in the packet, which we've certainly read and consumed and thought about. I appreciate the public has an interest in it, but I can promise you, at least from my perspective, if I have anything to say about it, there are going to be some substantial changes, not in principle, but in language and approach from what you're presenting here. So just keep that in mind.
That's
So
fine.
if I might, Mike, just interject for a second here, you analogized to the building of a house, if you will. If we're building a business, if you will, and, you know, we would need a Gantt chart, and with respect to dates, all the dates would land in the same spot, and we would be loading everybody up with so much to do by the end of December, it would be impossible. So to your point about dates, that's really what screamed at me. I'm not complaining at all, or I'm in with the goals and objectives and some of the sub-goals, et cetera, but dates, we have some work to do on there.
And there's a certain amount of tension between our saying that this is goals and objectives for calendar 24, fiscal 25, and saying we want to do some big things that we recognize that our objectives, our targets, or whatever we're going to start working on, we want to get as far as we can in that time period. When we get to housing, we're talking about 4 or 5 years. Again, this is a discussion we will have again when we get together to finalize this.
So should I just go through at the high level of what those buckets were for the public's knowledge, or would you like to how would you like to proceed?
I'll defer to my colleagues here. If I were, I think we've put it all in front of everybody. If they're interested in where we are, it's on the public record. And this is kind of a rehash of what's in the minutes.
All right, so that's fine. So we have public comments will be accepted on this.
And-
And then if we have to elaborate on why an objective is interpreted in certain way, we can certainly do that.
Yeah, and I do want to say I misspoke. I apologize. At the outset in my introductory comments, I asked for public comments on all of the business items. I don't know if there's anybody in the public here in the room or out in the virtual public that has a comment on the packet or the material or anything else. They are welcome to make it, and I see Ms. Gibbs has her hand raised. You are welcome to comment.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I can share these comments with you after. I've attended or reviewed all of the Planning Board, Water and Sewer, Affordable Housing Trust, and the Select Board meetings, including the December 2nd workshop that resulted in this draft. It's unfortunate that public health and safety and preserving the historic character of Chatham are not mentioned as objectives. Maybe they can be added. As to the specific goals and how to get there under excellence, educational excellence, it doesn't address Chatham's objective to attract year-round families to sustain our schools, particularly the elementary school. I know that that's Chatham's objective, not necessarily the Monomoy Regional School District. The vision statement references fiscal responsibility. Beyond providing an adequate budget, there's no objective regarding potential significant fiscal barriers, including the per-student costs rising, repairs to the elementary school and middle school, or that Harwich wants to change the regional agreement to make Chatham pay more. The superintendent was quoted as saying he would agree that Chatham has more financial wherewithal than Harwich. That premise isn't the case when half of our full-time community is over 65 on fixed incomes. And I think we should be preparing, it should be in this roadmap now to push back on that. Goal 2, maintaining a sustainable local economy with year-round focus. The only objective as it relates to the chamber is to increase off-season tourism. Restaurants, motels, shops close down in the winter for numerous reasons, including seasonal licenses, and you can't make them stay open. Off-season tourism, further straining infrastructure, shouldn't be promoted, in my view, if you want to be a full-time community. It comes along with all kinds of additional costs and manpower if we do that. Residents also need a break from tourism. Currently, retailers cater to tourists, not full-time residents. I think the chamber should be instead encouraged to find retailers to provide necessary goods and services for residents so that we don't have to drive to Hyannis and Orleans for sundries that we simply cannot get in any of our stores in Chatham. Goal 3, year-round housing, seniors on fixed incomes who need to downsize because their assessments have gone up substantially, who don't qualify for affordable or attainable housing, are not being considered in what appears to be the workforce housing direction by the Affordable Housing Trust. There's a huge need for moderately priced housing for those who would not otherwise financially qualify, and I hope that would be put in there as an objective. There's no mention under affordable housing about the quality of life and dignity as an objective for those who will live in the proposed affordable housing. Proposed plans are not conducive to families as is being discussed in the trust, Affordable Housing Trust Group. Mostly one bedroom with 60 units on 2.97 acres with no green space and insufficient parking for tenants who need to get to work, I think needs to be rethought. The suggestion that a couple could live in a one bedroom for a while with 1 or 2 children, and that walking, riding bikes, and taking buses rather than having a car, as stated at one of the Affordable Housing Trust meetings, should not be acceptable. I think it's really important that we look at the quality of life and say, would we want our children living there? Goal 5, improve and maintain Chatham's water. It references a comprehensive water management plan. I don't think there is such a thing. I'm not sure what it is. I can't find it. We do have a wastewater comprehensive plan from 2010. Drinking water and sewer are different, and I think they should be two distinct and two top priorities. We should not commit to increasing density by upwards of 1,000 people by 2028 with affordable housing without having sufficient sewer infrastructure and drinking water capacity for our existing population. Pardon me. The only objective stated is water conservation, education, and irrigation wells, and recommending that the Water and Sewer Committee be tasked to do an analysis by the end of 2024. In my view, it should be department heads and staff levels that take on that task, and it should be fast-tracked rather than potentially hiring a consultant sometime down the road. Timing is critical. It's going to take years to study, fund, and construct, and that should be unacceptable if we want to reduce nitrogen in our water and assure sufficient drinking water. The vision statement includes fiscal responsibility, but it's neither a dedicated goal, objective, or mentioned anywhere. There are numerous huge potential expenses not referenced that should be addressed when considering goals and objectives. I think there's a misunderstanding about how far along we are on the sewer. The impediment isn't grinder pumps, as some have been led to believe. Phase 1 of the comprehensive plan requires that 2/3 of the town's 7,697 properties, which would be 5,200, have infrastructure in place and connected by 2030. We have 3,800 and potentially hundreds of millions of dollars to go in 4 years to meet that commitment. We only have infrastructure in place for, once this next phase is done, for about 1,300 out of that 5,300. The cost of drinking water to repair and upgrade 9 wells with iron and manganese and PFAS filtration, increase pumping and storage capacity in new wells is going to cost millions. If PFAS force the shutdown of any wells, it's going to take 4 years and millions to get them back online. And we know that for a fact because that's what occurred with 5 and 8. That's how long it took. We have no idea of what the cost to taxpayers are going to be for 200 affordable housing units by 2028. We've been told that the minimum cost per unit will be $733,000 plus the land. I recognize that there will be subsidies about where we can get reimbursed on a substantial portion, but we need to know those numbers. And then I hope you'll take this in the spirit it's given. Goal 6, provide for the need of a diverse, livable community. Moving forward, I would hope that the Select Board and Affordable Housing Trust resist the urge to continue to use rhetoric to mischaracterize and marginalize anyone with differing opinions about the order of priorities or how to get there by being called NIMBYs, which has been done on numerous occasions, and that the actions of a vocal minority appear to foster mistrust in the community. It is not productive, and it's unnecessarily divisive, and it's not a minority of people. And I'm afraid it's going to backfire if it continues. Engaging all members of the public, not just recruiting those with goals and priorities that meet your objectives, should be the objective. As the vision statement says, that's what an inclusive community of demographically diversity around citizens should be. I am absolutely for affordable housing, but I also think that there has to be an ability to work with each individual group. There are a lot of moving parts here. Not everybody seems to be on the same page as to what kind of housing we need or the potential impact and the cost to taxpayers. There is going to be substantial money that has to be spent on water and sewer in order to be able to accommodate the affordable housing. And I would hope that they become as important a priority as the affordable housing is. And I hope that you will listen to people and understand that we all are in this for the same thing. I am not going to be personally affected by affordable housing where I live. That is not my issue. My issue is to do what's right for the people who will live there and the ability for the people who currently live here able to afford everything that you have planned, because they will have to leave. I think would be a shame if we end up displacing people because they can no longer afford to keep their homes because their expenses are getting so high. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Mr. Nacastro?
I don't know if there's anybody else. I would just, I think Elaine said at the beginning that she has her comments in writing if she wants to submit them to Kathy. And if anybody else, I don't know when we're going to schedule the session, but if anybody else in the public wants to submit some comments to us, I certainly would entertain them. They could submit them to Kathy, and they can be in our package for our session. And just one other comment, I did want to say that the draft document does not itself contain the type of language that I think Ms. Gibbs was talking about, and I think none of us would want to put that in the document.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the document
I'm not sure
is-
what language
Well, she
specifically you're
talked
referring
about
to, but I'm,
language that was dismissive of certain.
yeah, no,
And it doesn't
I think I know what that referred to, but that certainly doesn't reflect the view of this board. I am quite confident, and I think I want to leave it at that. I do want to say, if I didn't understand that she had those comments in writing, if she does, or I'll address you directly, Ms. Gibbs, if you're still on, if you would be willing to submit them, you will be doing Kathy Lewis a favor, because I was going to ask for effectively a transcription of your remarks so that we could have those in front of us when we next convene on this subject. So one way or the other, I'd like, and as Dean said, if any other member of the public would like to submit comments in writing, they're welcome as well.
That's fine. I'll be happy to submit them, and she does not have to try and transcribe it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. So thank you, Mr. Chair. So what would you like staff to do? What's the next steps that you would need from us?
I think that we need a meeting exclusively dedicated to completing this, the goals and objectives. I'll say, somewhere between an hour and two, and obviously as soon as possible, given your concerns with the budgeting. So, and I do believe that if we come prepared, which I certainly intend to do, and I'm sure everybody else does, I think we can accomplish this in a reasonably expeditious period of time. Yeah, Dean.
Could the session we're going to have, which I guess is a working session that wouldn't itself entertain public comment, but it's a public session, people can see it. Could we include a vote to approve them so we don't have to put this on a future agenda of the board?
Yeah, that's completely appropriate.
Or do we want to see
Yeah,
a final
no,
version?
no, absolutely. That's my intent. I would hope we could do that,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Yes.
So just to lay out timing, there's no available time before the budget is issued. I can't do a meeting this weekend or next weekend when we're trying to get the budget out. So if the board's comfortable of not having reference to goals, we can note that they're in progress, but it's probably not going to be a meeting until, if we do a Saturday, it's maybe January 27th or so.
Okay.
Yeah. If that's the only other alternative, that's what it has to be.
I didn't check if staff's available, but if you want to do a Saturday session. Otherwise, I think the meetings after next week are all going to be very heavy, regular select board meetings, because we'll be reviewing the department budgets.
No, I think the only other alternative would be a non-Tuesday night, and I suspect that doesn't work terribly well either.
It would probably have to be like Thursday, the 25th, if that's even, I'm sorry that we're so constrained with time on this, but I think, so it's just one thing, if you want to have it on an off night, or if you want to do a Saturday morning.
I don't mind a Saturday morning.
I don't mind it either.
That's fine.
Sorry, Dean. Okay, let's say Saturday morning, the 27th at 9 AM? Or
Yeah, I think we'll check that and I'll check
Okay,
with
okay,
Corey
good.
on that one,
Okay,
with the chair as well.
Good, okay.
Okay.
All right. Unless there's any further business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Nacastro. Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Dykens.
Aye.
And Mr. Shell says aye. Thank you. Good night, Chatham.